Okay, Sterling K. Brown. When we saw you on the red carpet for The People versus O.J. Simpson a few months ago, and we
Yes.
told you this role was getting a lot of Emmy buzz. You know, people were talking about, in terms of the Emmys. And then look what happened. You are now Emmy nominated, Sterling K. Brown. Tell us what does that feel like?
It feels really cool. I've been doing this for 15 years now. Success for me has been able to pay my bills, to be able to provide for my family, to have some form of stability in this crazy show business world. But to receive the level of notoriety that has come because of The People versus OJ, I just feel blessed, man. I've been enjoying this ride from the beginning, and hopefully it will continue a little while longer.
The Emmys are really good about nominating people they already know, people like John Travolta, Sarah Paulson. It's more rare for them to kind of pluck somebody out who's not as well known.
Sure.
And so that's really a testament to your performance and how it stuck with these voters and in their minds as they were casting their ballots.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate the Academy for the recognition because I know, I mean, I'm the new kid on the block. We've got Dr. House, we've got Landry from Crucifixorious, and Bokeem, and Vincent Vega, and Ross, and all these people who are known commodities. And then this kid from St. Louis, Missouri slips in through the cracks. So I feel blessed to be in such wonderful company, and I'm going to enjoy the night. Whatever happens September 18th, it's going to be a good night for me.
I love that you called him Ross. Did you call David Schwimmer Ross
No,
on set?
no,
Please say that.
never called him Ross on set. That would have been a faux pas. This is just between friends.
I believe the final tally was 22 nominations, I think.
Yeah.
What was that morning like? Because it's not just you nominated, it's your castmates, it's the writers, the directors, and everyone involved basically got a nomination.
It was amazing. I mean, 1 through 6 on our call sheet all got nominated in the acting categories. All three of our major writers in the writers' room were all nominated. The 3 directors that we had for the entirety of the series all got directed. So I was so overwhelmed with joy for everybody involved in this process because it was truly a labor of love. Being on set, people were there to bring their A game and to tell the best story possible. There were no egos involved in this thing. Like, the best idea was the idea that got carried through in its execution, and we all just wanted to make this story so great. And the fact that my castmates, from Travolta to Sarah to Courtney to Cuba, everybody was so kind and embraced me as their peer from the beginning. Like, I didn't get hazed. I didn't have to like pick up cups of coffee or tea for anybody. They were like, "You're here to play ball with us. Let's do it together." And it turned out really, really well.
Nice. So let's go back to the beginning. I know a lot of the cast members, they are so well known, they probably didn't have to audition, but I think you told me you did it the old-fashioned way. You did go into the auditions. What was that process like?
It was January 2015, the beginning of pilot season. I got the call that they wanted me to audition for Chris Darden. And so I went online and looked at a lot of clips from the trial. And the first thing I did was shave my head. I was like, I don't want to give them any excuses or any reasons why they can't see me as the character. I shaved my head. I got my rehearsal glasses, which are basically just frames without any lenses in it, so it doesn't cause any reflections for the camera. And I memorized the lines and worked on it. I felt good about what I'd done. I went in for the audition and I got pretty good feedback from the casting director. And then it was about 3 months where I heard nothing. And I was in Albuquerque, New Mexico, working on Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. I was sitting in the hotel restaurant, and I was looking through my IMDb Pro account at everyone who had booked all of the roles that I had auditioned for in that pilot season. And I was like, "Oh, Bokeem got that. Good for him. That's fantastic." And as I was doing that, I got a phone call from my manager or agent or both saying that they wanted to see me again and test me for The People versus OJ. And I flew back to LA, and Ryan was busy with Scream Queens at the time. So he was in New Orleans working on that pilot. So I met with Brad Simpson and Nina Jacobson at Fox. And I was waiting to see like what other people they brought in to test for the role, because no network usually likes to bring in one person for a role of this magnitude. So every black guy that walked by me, I was giving them like the hard eyeball, like, "Oh, this guy he doesn't really look like Darden, but maybe they're expanding their horizons on who the character could be.
Mm-hmm.
And it turned out that I was the only guy that they brought in. And I sat and talked with Brad and Nina for about a half an hour, and they said, you want to read some scenes? So I went in, I read the scenes, and they were different scenes than the original audition. And the whole time that I was doing it, I was reading with Brad, and he was giving me different directions. And Nina was just sitting on a couch, and she'd smile, and she'd just be rocking back and forth. I took that to be a good sign. And later on that day, when I had taken my son to his basketball practice, got a phone call from my agent and manager saying that I booked the job, and a little tear trickled down the side.
Nice. It was meant to be. I can't imagine anyone else, playing Chris Darden, except for maybe if Chris Darden had, had a SAG card and agreed to do it himself.
That would have been a very interesting interpretation, because he's probably 20 years too old to play himself.
Yeah. Have you heard from him at all? What did he think of your performance, or what did he think of the show, or is he kind of quieter?
I know nothing, Marcus. I haven't heard anything from him. I've heard from his daughter, Janae Cochran. Lord have mercy on my soul, Darden, who was 15 years old at the time of the trial. And she reached out to me via Twitter and said she had heard some of my interviews and thought that I had a very sympathetic stance towards her father, because she was very protective and very concerned that he might get sort of, raked through the coals once again 20 years later. But she felt as if I had respect for him and what he had to go through. And she was very complimentary. Asked for Mr. Darden himself. I haven't heard anything, and I probably don't expect it. Mm-hmm. He's a busy man. He's got his own life. It's all good.
You played a lot of characters throughout your career. How is playing a real person different? Is it more challenging in a way?
There are challenges to all of them. The interesting thing about playing a real life character, for me in particular, living in the same city that he lives in, that he's still alive, like knowing that I could bump into him at any time, I was very cognizant of the fact. And I was hoping that if he happened to see the performance, that he would recognize the glimmer of himself in that performance. So I wanted to do him right. I wanted to sort of honor everything that he went through. He talks about it being, just one of the more hellacious experiences of his life. And I can understand why he wouldn't want to relive it. So there was a lot of watching film, reading his book, an addendum to reading Jeffrey Toobin's book were quite instrumental in understanding how he felt about himself through that process, and how Toobin and the world at large was observing him through that process. It was fascinating. It's actually In Contempt is a really, really great book. If I didn't have that as a resource, if I didn't have the copious amounts of footage that I had, I would have been, swimming upstream. So I did as much research as possible, as opposed to other roles where your imagination can be sort of in the front and center, and you get a chance to create something from scratch. This was being created with my imagination, but also with an eye towards, recreating someone who was a living, breathing human being.
We talked with Courtney B. Vance last week, and it was my colleague Chris Beecham interviewed him, and Courtney was telling Chris about how on set he would sometimes, dance to lighten the mood. What was the set like? Was it very, very kind of dramatic, intense, or was it fun? What was it like working with Sarah Paulson? What was it like working with these guys?
So that's three. Okay, there's a couple questions.
Yeah.
Yes, people would dance, and I think you have to do something light to sort of break the tension of the subject matter that we're dealing with. I know Courtney mentioned that Anthony would turn on his speakers and play music for everybody. Anytime Travolta got up and danced, people would be so thrilled, and the galleys and the jury, they just clapped and applauded.
I hope someone filmed that. I hope that's on the DVD.
I think somebody may have. I hope so too, because it's really quite delightful. I hope no one filmed Cuba Gooding Jr. pulling his pants down and showing everyone his butt cheeks, because that happened more times than I can actually count, Marcus. But it was serious in its shooting, and so you kind of have to go under that so that you can just breathe and make it through a 12, 14-hour day. Working with Sarah Paulson was fantastic. She is the living embodiment of what I call a professional. always had her lines down. And given the fact that she was doing 2 roles at the same time on the same line, rarely getting her 12-hour turnaround, but being prepared and obviously killing both of them to the place where she gets an Emmy nomination for both roles. She's so present and so honest. You know, it's hard to take your eyes off of somebody who's always telling the truth. And Sarah Paulson is a soothsayer. I love her. I love her. Truly.
I'm going to talk with her on Tuesday. Is there any questions that you have for her that I can say, you know, Sterling K. Brown wants to know this?
No, I think I know everything I need to know about Sarah Paulson because I asked her a lot of questions and I asked a lot of personal questions and she gave me very forthright and personal answers. So she's a pretty open book, or at least she was with me. So no questions.
At the Emmys, you have to choose one episode to submit to the judges, and then they watch that episode and judge, you know, all of the nominees together. The episode that you went with was Manna from Heaven. Right. Was this a decision that you were involved with, or was this kind of an FX decision? And why did you guys go with this one?
I was involved. I think FX ultimately sort of co-signs it. Like if they disagreed with me, I think they would have said like, what about this one? But we were on the same page. And it was, for me, I was thinking about episode 5, episode 7, and episode 9. And 9 is sort of when Darden can't take it anymore. Like he's sort of been towing the company line and going along with Marsha's lead. But at this point, well, first of all, in 7, he starts to break away when he decides to try on the glove without her consent. But in episode 9, he's sort of his most audacious or boisterous. You know, he has a couple of explosions, one in the not hotel, what am I trying to say? Elevator. And then one in the courtroom where Ito kind of has to put him back in his place. And it was an episode that was shot out of order. We didn't shoot everything chronologically. So we would jump around from one episode to the next. And I remember shooting that, and the courtroom scene in particular, I would get so mad and so frustrated that the lines would fly out of my head. And lines don't tend to fly out of my head. I'm pretty solid when it comes to that type of thing. And Anthony had to call cut, and I had to walk away for like 3 minutes and just drill it and get it together because the emotion was overtaking like the craft. And so I had to bring those two things back together and marry them, and it was fine. And once it was over, I can remember thinking, or people saying to me like, I hope not to get on your bad side. That was not, you know, the fun Sterling that we're accustomed to, etc. So I knew that it was a powerful scene, and that episode had a few powerful scenes that I felt would be a good showcase for this Emmy run.
Mm-hmm. How closely did you follow the trial in the 1990s? I think I was in high school, so watching the miniseries, a lot of things I learned about the trial that I didn't pay attention to back in the 90s. How closely were you watching it, and especially with Chris Darden? Was there anything that happened with him in real life that maybe didn't make it onto the program?
Okay, so I was a freshman in college, and I did watch it, but not religiously because I didn't want to flunk out of college.
Yeah,
I knew a lot of people who were watching a little bit too much, and their grades were suffering just a little bit. But everybody watched the Bronco chase. Everybody watched the verdict. And when that verdict transpired, the level of enthusiasm for the Black students at Stanford University was through the roof. And just like the rest of the country, the white students were looking at the Black students like, what are you rejoicing about? So it's been very interesting to see how that was reflected throughout the whole country, time and time again. And I hope that the show is able, one of its crowning achievements, I hope, is that people from the other side can understand why people had the reaction that they did. Mm-hmm. That white people could see why Black people were so enthusiastic, and why Black people could see why white people were appalled. So that's how much I watched. In terms of Darden at the time, I mean, the perspective of Darden from Black America was not favorable. You know, he was called an Uncle Tom and a race traitor and a sellout. And I think I probably upheld that view as well, because you have these two men in the trial, these two lawyers, Cochran and Darden. And Cochran was so polished and so great at what he did. And he was able to create the narrative that changed things from a double homicide to an indictment of the Los Angeles Police Department. And you know, if you were for, you can't be for Cochran and for Darden. So if one of them is the hero, the other one is the fall guy. And Darden was very much the fall guy. So to revisit this from the prosecution standpoint, for me in particular, and to have a deep level of empathy for Darden and the position in which he was placed and what he had to navigate, I found it really delightful, because you can't play someone and judge them at the same time. So whatever judgment I may have had for him 21, 22 years ago, I had to let that go and recognize that here's a man in a very difficult situation doing the best job that he knows how to do. And I was thankful to have that experience and to release the judgment that I personally had for him several years ago.
Hmm. And switching gears, what can you tell us about this new NBC project? I think you guys are in the middle of filming right now, right?
We're in the middle of filming our second episode, This Is Us, by Dan Fogelman, NBC's Tuesday nights after The Voice, starting September 20th. That's
a good time slot. Hey.
It's solid. It's a nice little vote of confidence, I would say. It's a dramedy. It's about family. It's about people all turning 36 on the same day, and how they have certain things in common with one another because of their birthday, and come to find out through the course of the pilot that they actually have more in common than what we know from the beginning. But I can't tell you that, or else NBC would be very, very upset. But I can tell you it's got this wonderful tone of lightheartedness and extremely funny, and also very, very heartfelt. The show wears its heart on its sleeve and is not afraid to make you cry, and really wants to give you a sort of cathartic experience of life. Like knowing that you're not in this whole thing by yourself, that other people are going through it with you. And so hopefully by watching us go through our journeys and navigating what comes next at age 36, whether it's my character finding his biological father, or Chrissy Metz's character struggling with her weight, Justin Hartley's character trying to figure out what he wants to do with his career, whether to take the money or to stay true to his artistic integrity, or Milo and Mandy's characters becoming parents for the first time, having triplets at that in their mid-30s. Like hopefully America, or the world at large, will see characters that they can relate to and embrace, and be willing to go on this journey with us. It's a pretty great show. It's the best network pilot that I've read in about 15 years.
Wow. I can't wait.
Yeah, it's good. You'll like it.
And now, final question. I know you have to run. You've probably been asked this before, so forgive me, but these Ryan Murphy anthologies, they love bringing actors back into new roles. Are you maybe going to be popping up in American Crime Story season 2, or American, what's the other one? Horror Story, sorry.
Okay, so
any chances?
Horror Story is shooting now, so probably not the Horror Story. As far as Crime Story is concerned, I believe they're going to start sometime in January, and I don't know if I'll be free then or not. But if I am free, I would love very much to be a part of it. It was a wonderfully collaborative, artistic experience working with Ryan, and the caliber of what they're trying to do in addressing the story of Katrina is something that fascinates me. So Ryan, if I'm available and you want me, then I'm yours.
I have a feeling he may want you. All right, well, it was great talking to you today. We wish you best of luck. September 18th, I believe, is the big day.
That is correct, man. Hey, I'm lucky already, man. I get to be in the room where it happens, so it's all good. Thank you.
Nice. All right, have a good day.
You too, man. Take care.